ago, but it's different in the sense that uh, the characters don't belong and the time frame changes. And he said, yes, but the moral is the same.
Ah.
That's the important thing. I myself don't remember. I know now those stories I've heard. Some of them I heard from Baba, some of them I heard from something in the context of Meher Baba. But the important thing of the story is not whether the guy was Muslim or Hindu or Zoroastrian, was the lesson that was taught to the person. So it is true what you're saying. I am not being keeping a record of the story. The only important thing about the story, he said to me, is the message that the story conveys. So I don't know, and I wrote a little book about these stories from Erich that are somehow put together. And I say there in the introduction, I don't, uh, this is not recorded, this is in my mind, and my mind adds to it little colors, context, like what I have now, for example, in the background, the little bridge on Meher Center's lake, but I'm not there, but
Mhm.
it's beautiful. And you have Meher Baba with his
Mhm.
hand
Yeah.
dead, but it's beautiful. So that's part of the context of what the story is. But the important thing is what you convey with the story. And that's the thing, that's my point. Because otherwise, anyhow, at 82, I don't remember many things, but I remember the love that I experienced in those moments that I'm telling you. That I remember, and I want to convey it to you as much as I can. But that does not mean that I'm going to remember the details, because sometimes I go in the morning to the fridge and I don't know what I am doing there. It's the truth with old age, that's the truth. So anyhow, so you,
So you were saying, I recorded you halfway through. You were saying that when Erich tells a story, sometimes the details they're different. He does,
yeah, the
yeah.
same, the story, the moral of the story, the teaching of the story is the same, but the character changes.
Mhm.
Uh, Changes gender, even man or woman, or changes nationality or what religion he belonged to, but it's the same story. Uh, and some of them are, I mean, I remember a story that he's told, and listen to me. I am now sitting, uh, I have found a place against the wall, which were the most uh, disputed seats available in Mandali Hall, because you could recline there. And if,
Oh.
and if you could find a cushion, that was even better. I traveled long for 3 days. I was jet lagged. I was tired. And the atmosphere, as you remember, at Mandali Hall was like being at home on a Sunday morning. I mean,
Mhm.
it was so familiar and so cozy
Mhm.
that if you recline on that against that wall, the breeze would come through the windows, puffing the those curtains that were there, simple things against the windows. In that building, which was used to be a stable, and now it was a Mandali Hall. You could hear the birds outside. Uh, it was such a incredible atmosphere, and then this is just the atmosphere from the point of view of the outside of things, and then inside you were feeling all that incredible love, incredible humbleness, naturalness, as I said, you were feeling at home on Sunday morning, surrounded by aunties and aunts, aunts and brothers and sisters. Everybody was telling their story. There were tears and laughter. Everything was so sincere. Everything was so pure. I've never been in a place like that in my life. I never had been in a place like that in my life. I never had been again in a place like that in my whole life. That was something incredible. So I am sitting down there now. I'm looking at Eruch, talking about this or that. And this is how I collected these stories. I remember this story that he said one day. He mentioned, I mean, you must have heard this story, but he mentioned that there was once this master which was going to the fields in India with his disciples, and it was very hot. We're talking about, you know, the Deccan Plateau, Maharashtra, full summer, very hot, very hot. So they found a shelter place to rest, and the master sent all of the disciples except for this one to do something. I can't remember what. And now this disciple, this is what Erich was telling the story. This disciple had always had in his mind this story, this question about Maya, because he must have had been talking about Maya, and he had explained it, but it didn't sink in the disciple. What is Maya? What is this illusion? How can I understand this? So everybody left, and he was there alone with his master. And the master looked at him very lovingly, and he knew that in the mind of this disciple was a question. So the question came out of the disciple, and he said, Master, and the master said to him, do do you have anything that you want to inquire about? He says, Yes, yes, master. Can you tell me what is Maya? And the master said, Oh, oh, that's a question that I have to explain to you, but I'm so tired. We have been walking for such a long time. I'm thirsty. So why don't you go to the river next, which is, half a kilometer from here? Go to the river, bring me some fresh water, and I will tell you really, really what is Maya. So he went, and as he was getting his bucket into the river to fill the jar, there was a flash flood that happened. And shoo, this rush of water came in the river, and the man was taken downstream, rolling, 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 and he almost died. And the water, several miles downstream, he was thrown into the riverbed, and he was there unconscious. And a young woman that was washing her clothes in the river saw him, and she tried to bring him to life, but he was totally gone. So she got her father, and with both of them, they took him to their house. They lived close by, and put him in bed. And for weeks, he was, recovering consciousness. But when he recovered consciousness, he had amnesia. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know why he was there. But this was a young woman, and he was a young man. So he fell in love with her. And she nourished him and, nurtured him, and she recovered his health. He couldn't care anymore who he was. So he fell in love, and they got married. The father was very happy because they had no hands in the farm to work except the woman, the daughter. And they were happy and prospered. And he became one of the big farmers. They had several children. And now, probably, I don't know, 10, 15 years after that, uh, they were celebrating one of these traditional things in India. And they decided to have these barges. They were already wealthy, have these barges full of food and ornaments, and to go to the other side of the river and have a party, a picnic, whatever. And they boarded these things. And when they were in this river, a flash flood came big flash flood came, and everybody was off the board, and his wife with the little baby that they just had, they were drowning, and he tried to save the baby, and he tried to save the wife, but everybody was gone, 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 and then they rolled down, path, and he's now on the riverbed, almost unconscious, and he opens his eyes like that, and he sees the sandals of the master. And he looks up, and the master looks at him and says to him, "Where's my glass of water?" And then he says to him, "By the way, that's Maya." So, so I heard that story. I don't remember. I can remember that story because it's the most beautiful story I've heard in my life. Right there, Erich was telling that story. And, with his cadence in that place, and all of my life became part of that Maya. Everything that had happened to me in life was like that. And I realized how deep was that story. You know, this is all. This is all there is. Me anyhow. So this is the kind of feeling that was provoked in me by being there uh, in Mandali Hall, in that room, listening to this man. And one day, since I am now talking to you about these stories, in one of my visits there, I think it was Michael LePage, not Michael, Bill LePage. They look alike. All the things like each other, but they look alike. Bill LePage. He came to India, and he brought, which is the first time I have seen films at the center, and even some in India, but they were the jumpy kind, black and white jumpy kind that went like that, and Baba was going like that. But this time, it was a professional made film, and it was a film made about Guru Prasad. It was brought by Bill LePage from Australia, and it even had a professional, I think, actor or whatever you call that, who was speaking the words of Baba. Uh, so there was Baba. I could see him. We were Mandali Hall. The Mandali were all there. I was sitting on the floor about, I don't know, 15 feet in front of me was Eruch also sitting on the floor. We're looking at the screen. And I don't know why, because I was a Baba lover, I card carrying Baba lover. But all of a sudden, in the film, Baba is there in Guru Prasad. You must have seen those films in which he's moving his head like that, and his hands are like that, and he's saying, and it's silent, but the narrator, the professional narrator, is saying, "I am God in human form." And where Baba is moving his head like that, it's very hot, obviously. Eruch is approaching in the film, and with a handkerchief, he's taking this sweat, cleaning the face of Baba's sweat. And Baba is going like that. So when the narrator says, "I am God in human form," I said, "Oh God, I realized it fell upon me. It dawned upon me. I said, "Oh, he's what do you mean? He's God in human form. Wow." Then I thought, my mind, mind is like that. I was looking at Erich, who was cleaning the face with so much nurturing. And I said, now. Then I looked and Erich was 5 feet in front of me, looking at the film like that. So I said, now, if he is God in human form, who's this guy? And at the same instant that I thought that, Erich just turned his head around and looked at me straight in the eye and smiled. That's all. So I don't know what it means, but that I felt it. I felt it. It was like he was a very special man. What is it that Baba said? If I could, but I can't, because I'm equidistant to everybody. But if I could, Erich would be my best friend. Yeah. So I know. I mean, these are the things that I'm telling you stories that I probably have read somewhere, but these are the stories that were coming to my ears there. And I was getting them not so much in terms of the context of the story, in terms of the words and the lines, but how they affected me. Like, for example, there's one story that he said, Erich there, he said, somebody asked him, somebody asked him, was there any time that Baba was alone that you know? Because he always was with somebody in the room at night, you or Bauji or somebody. There was always somebody with him. But there's any time that he was completely alone. And Erich just looked in the air as he would do, his mouth half open, looking, thinking, and he got it. And he said, yes. I remember one time we were somewhere in India, he said, near a river. I can't remember. I mean, I'm telling you, like he probably said, but I can't remember where in India. And Baba has sent the whole party to do things, just like this disciple did. And Baba was with Deruch. They were alone, both of them. And then Baba said to Eruch, why don't we go to the other side of the river? There was a river passing by. There's always a river. And he said, why don't we go to the other side of the river? And then Eruch found out, what there were some kids, like teenagers, that operated some sort of a very rudimentary ferry that would take people from this bank of the river to the other. It was not such a wide river, it was deep. It was, relatively, but they could swim and push this raft to the other side. So Eruch negotiated with them, and both Eruch and Baba went in this little boat, and they were pushing the boat, but the teenagers, this is what Eruch said, were so raucous and undisciplined, and they were playing games as they were pushing the thing, that they turned the boat. The boat turned, and then they both Eruch and Baba fell into the water. Now, Eruch told us that the water was filthy, filthy. I mean, we are talking about India in those times. It was filthy. It was a filthy water. So Eruch swam and he then looked and he realized that Baba didn't know how to swim. So Baba was going down. So he went in and grabbed Baba and took him out and swam with him to the shore. And Baba was covered with filth. And he put him in there. And he said, Erich said to me, I remember that because it was so beautiful. He said, Baba, he said, you have to promise. I'm going to go. I have to get some water and some fresh clothes. But I mean, you're alone here. There's nobody, and you don't talk. So what are we going to do? I don't want you to go wandering around. I want you to please stay here. And he said that Baba looked at him with kind of like a mischievousness in his eyes. And he went like that. He stopped. And then so Eru said, promise me. And Baba said, go ahead. So Erich went, but he had problems because even the house, he didn't have a key. So he had to jump a fence, get water, get clothes, come back. And when he came back to his great comfort, Baba was still sitting in the same place. And so he helped him, he washed him, he helped him dress over. And he said that Baba looked at him with so incredible love. This is Erich saying that. He looked at him and he said to him, today, and this is Erich now, I'm repeating, I'm going to say it even if it's not proper because Erich said it in Mandali Hall. Today, you took me out of this shit. One day, I'm going to take you out of this shit. And that was the story that Erich said. And for me, it was incredible. The description he made of the eyes of the intimacy that there was between those persons, the love that Baba had for Erich, and the love that Erich had for Baba. Yes. Goes back in my mind. Oh. But one day I'm going to tell you a story which is more personal. I went there, was then living in Mexico. This time I was not traveling alone. I went with my family. Julie, who is my wife presently, my second wife, she had a daughter from a previous marriage whose name is Ilya. And Ilya was a very intense child. She was 7, 8 years old when we went to India with her for the first time. And she was all over the place, literally all over the place, running. She had like, ants in her feet and always walking around and playing with other kids and very dynamic girl. And she would come in and out Mandali Hall, running back and then get something from me or the mother and went out to the bench to play with our kids and to sit with Manny. And she was doing that. So we were there 2 weeks. That was one time that I was there for a long time. And now we are sitting because we are having some transportation out that afternoon from Merasat. And we were sitting there having our last moments with Erich and in Mandali Hall. And in comes Ilya, my daughter, running. She comes running and she sits down in Erich's lap. And she says to him, she looks at him, he has these big blue eyes, blue-green eyes, and she looks at him in the eyes and she said, I want you to tell me a story. And Erich looks at her and said, are you crazy? You have been here for 2 weeks, gallivanting all over the place, running and running and running and running, and now you are about to leave and you want me to tell you a story? And Erich talking to her and he said, I'll tell you a story. There was one day, a little girl just like you, actually more or less the same age as you are now. She was 7 or 8 years old. Her name was Shirin. She was the sister of Dara. And she was Baba's niece. And she would come here to And one day she came and she stood in front of Baba sitting in that chair. And as you see in that chair, there's a photograph of Baba sitting in the chair, but on the photograph around the head of Baba, there's like a halo. There's like a white space. Uh, and uh, and so Shireen asked Baba, I don't understand. When I look at the picture of you sitting on the chair that you're sitting now, I see that there is like a light around your head. But when I look at you here sitting on the chair, I don't see any light. And then Eric said that Baba answered to Shirin, yes, because to see that light in the picture, you use these eyes, but to see the light around me,
Oh.
see another eye.
Hmm.
But as he said that, Erich, Ilya interrupted him and said, but I see the light in Baba's tomb with these eyes. And Erich said to her, what light? The light that comes from Baba's tomb like that. That's why people bow down. That's why people close their eyes when they go inside. Because this light coming from where do you see the light coming from? From where the letters are, it comes a big light like that. It's like, and he embraced her. That
Wow.
was another story that I remember.
How old is she today, Ilya?
Ilya is today 54 years old and she lives in Mexico City. She married a Mexican young man. She has two daughters, now 23, twins, and went back several times to India after that. And she was just crazy about Eruch. She had some deep connection with him. And Eruch also. I still remember that she gave him a t-shirt that said, Viva Mexico, long live Mexico, one of her trips to there, because we were she grew up in Mexico. She grew up in Mexico City. So it is, yeah, that's it. I don't know. I don't know if I am tiring you or you want to ask me something. I don't know. There, the stories come to my mind as I'm talking to you, but maybe you want to ask some questions. I don't know.
I
It's
don't have what.
go ahead.
No.
Well, the other person that I don't know if I told you the story because uh, that I had a very special connection with. I mean, well, probably we all did, but I mean, just because of the role she played and how I met her. You see, the first time I went to India, although I came to Baba in 1970, the first time I came to India because I had no money to go was in 1974 in December. And I went with a friend of mine that had been there. I mean, a group, and we stayed at a crummy little hotel, which was called the East West Hotel, that was near the train station in Ahmednagar. And it was my first time in India. And so it's a very beautiful story because he said that he wanted us to go to the tomb because it was my first time in India. He had been there once. He wanted us to go early in the morning to the tomb. So we decided that we were going to walk from East West Hotel to Hyderabad. and we set up 4:30 in the morning. Now, this is 1974, so I don't know. There was so there was not much happening in the roads. There were these tongas with horses that were coming, and these huge trucks that lorries in India that go at honking their horn at us in the middle of those narrow roads at the full speed that they can go, honking their horn, beep, 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 and everybody gets out of it because they don't stop. They just probably don't have brakes. So we were going down the street, and it was beginning to dawn, which actually was one particular day that I saw something that I had never seen in my life. I've seen it in pictures, but never in person. And it was at that time that those planes uh, outside of Ahmednagar going towards Mehrabad, there was no construction there. Uh, so it was those Deccan Plateau uh, spaces. And it was dawning, and I was seeing the sun coming out, but at the same time, which I had never seen in my life, on the other end of the horizon was the full moon going down. So
Mm.
they were like opposite, the sun and the moon. I've seen that in pictures, but I've never seen it in person. And it was so, I felt like I was dreaming. It was never being, and then we were walking to Baba's tomb. But it was late. So my friend told me, oh, it is now almost, we're not going to get there. I thought that it was closer. You should have left earlier. So let's hitchhike. And I said, what? Hitchhike? So we started to hitchhike. And incredibly, one of those lorries stopped. And, but I was amazed because we looked, and there were probably about 8 Indians in the
Mm.
cabin of the truck, all dressed in white with dirty clothes, but they were there in the middle. And my friend said to them, Merabad, Merabad. And they replied, Merabad, 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 Merabad. So we walk in and we sit on their laps. And I felt that that was like a kind of a, one of those Charlie Chaplin films. And we were being driven, but it didn't take long. It took probably 10 minutes, 15 minutes because they were going at high speed. And then they stopped in the middle of nowhere. I've never been there. And they said, all of them at the same time, Merabad, 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 Merabad. So it's like, okay. So we say thank you in Spanish and English, and they say, Merabad, whatever. And so we climb up, we go there. As we go there, this little woman I've never met, Mansari, but I never met her, she was coming out of the tomb with the clothes and flowers, wrapping, and she was going to get some fresh clothes. She had known my friend from the prior time, so she said, "Could you stay here and watch everything? I'm going just to get some clean stuff." And she said, "Yeah." I didn't know what to do. He bowed down. I didn't know the customs. I was, I just, you know, sat squatted on the floor of the tomb. I was feeling an enormous feeling of welcoming, of love, things that you cannot talk about, you don't express, inexpressible feeling. And I closed my eyes and I was sort of talking to Baba, asking him to let me do something for him. But I mean, I've always had a big ego, so I said, "That's big thing, not a little thing, something for him, big thing for him." So as I am sitting there, concentrating and praying to Baba, to, please let me do something for you. All of a sudden, I hear this little squeaky voice. I open my eyes, and this woman who was standing up was looking straight into my eyes, who was squatting down. And she said to me, offer me a brush. She says, "You want to do something for Baba?" And she offered me this brush. And she said, "Could you please brush that floor on the tomb? That floor on the tomb." And I got it. And she became my friend.
Mm.
Sari, there was something in her which I loved. And every time I used to go to India, in those impetuous, momentary times that I went, she was always sitting in the morning in the same bench, in that green bench that was next to the filing cabinet inside the shed in front of the tomb. And one day I told her, "Why are you always sitting there? That is like perfect masters, Babajan always sat in the tree, that one person always sat there, and you always sit there." And she said, "No, no, I sit here because these people that come, these Baba lovers that come from America and other places, they're not very intelligent. They put their cameras, their wallets, their things in the benches, and then they go inside the tomb. They're all spaced out, and they don't know that there are people living in Arangaon, which they are very poor people, and they are rascals, and I'm just watching that they don't take away their things." That's what she told me. But one day, 5 or 6 years later, she used to do that all the time. But one day, she was no longer sitting in the bench inside. She was now sitting in the pandal in front of the tomb, that big pandal where she was sitting there looking towards the tomb. And I woke up the first time, this was 2, 3 days, and I woke up and I see her there, and I say to her, "Mansari, what are you doing? Who's minding the bench and the property?" I said, "No, I no longer sit there because somebody has decided I'm getting old," she said to me, "and I cannot hear well. And because I cannot hear well, I tend to speak louder. And somebody has decided that there's some solemnity there. And because as if that is a place where somebody died, they don't understand that that is the place where something was born. Somebody was born." And she said, "And I sit here because I don't want to break the rules of the silence." But Mansari was the kind of person that she would walk inside the tomb when you were cleaning it in the morning, and she would crack jokes inside the tomb. She would say, "Have you heard this joke?" And that's the way she was. But anyhow, that was also, I mean, what I can tell you, Betty, and Diane and Terry, is that for me, I've never met people like that. They're the most natural
Mhm.
people that I ever met in my life. Really.
Mhm.
My idea when I went there for the first time is that I was going to meet people that were like that, like Gandalfs dressed in white and with all sorts of things. But all those people were absolutely natural and more than human. I mean, they were just like my impression was that these are people like aunts and aunties that lived in the countryside that you go to visit. Uh, and immediately you felt familiar. I mean, you're talking. I'm not a very sociable character. Born in Puerto Rico, in a totally different culture. No, India probably happened to you people also, but India was never, I mean, when I went to school, India was never even mentioned. I mean, nothing was there about India. High school, my university, India was something that I heard. The farther east that I went was the Arabian Nights and stuff like that. But India, all of a sudden, I'm not in Delhi. I'm not in Bombay. I'm in Ahmednagar. Not even Ahmednagar. I am in Merasadun, Merabad, surrounded by these people. And I used to think, what am I? If somebody would have told me when I was 20 years old, 15 years old, you're going to be visiting this place, I would say, you're crazy. I mean, there's nothing there that is, do you know, the most incredible thing is how these people, these moments, they were more familiar to me than my culture. I felt it in my heart. I've never felt, I don't know, it's nothing mystical about it. It's just naturalness about it.
Hmm. Absolutely right. What struck me was that they're all different. They're not one of them is just like they're all very
Yeah.
themselves different.
In addition to that, they were all different and they were, wow. Now, I think I might mention this one to you, but I want to probably, I don't know if it's time, but end up with this story. One of the people that really um, touched my heart also there, they all did, but for some, I was particularly at that age, kind of shy. I never was, uh, I never wanted to establish relationship with people in order to establish relationship with people. So I was kind of I didn't want to add collections of people to, like I know these people, that's not the way I was. So my relationship with them comes as although what you're hearing now, this is happening inside me. I don't share this with anybody. You're making me share it with you now, or people ask me, I do tell. But there was one person that always touched my heart because her eyes were very intriguing to me. And that was Arnabas. Arnabas. She had, I thought that she had stars in her eyes. I don't know why. I looked at her and she had these stars in her, and her smile was, I felt like, you see, my family in Puerto Rico was from a little town called Bonadías, which is really, really a little village. And I used to go there with the family, Christmas and stuff like that. Hi, Alan. And
Power off.
Jai Baba, brother. So, and I used to go there, uh, and I always was a kid, and I always felt a lot of love for these old aunties that I had. They were always very, very embracing, very loving. So that's the way I felt with Arnavas. Arnavas, she was not one of the of that main characters, in terms of the Mandali whole thing. She was always sitting, going back. But she attracted me incredibly. One day, I don't know if I told you this story before, but one day, one of those 2, 3 days that I went there for several times, I decided I was having some issues, so I decided to go to Seclusion Hill rather than go to Mera's Porch and to stay in Mandari Hall. So I walked up to Seclusion Hill and I stayed there for 1 or 2 hours. I really got blissed out. I mean, I really. I was spaced out, really spaced out. I came down and I was spaced out. So when I walked in, uh, I looked at it was already 5:30. People were going to be, the bells were going to ring. At that time, people would stay there till 6. So I decided not to join people in the porch, not to join people in Mandali Hall, but you just have a glass of water. I'm just, I was just like that. But Arnabas was sitting in that bench on the end of the veranda. That was the only bench that was made out of marble. I think it was in front of what were the old dispensary was. And she beckoned. She was sitting there and she beckoned me. I was drinking the water and I walked to her and she looked at me. And again, her eyes twinkle like that, twinkle stars. And her smile was she was like, I don't know, a fairy. And she said to me, Arsenio, how are you doing? And my reply to her, but she must have seen it in my eyes. I was spaced out. I replied to her, Arnavas, why can't we always stay like this? And she put her hand on my knee and she said, yes, Arsenio, but if we did, who's going to do the work? And I never understood that until later. I don't even know if I now. I thought that she's talking about my work, and what is she talking about? But I think she was talking about something else. Being spaced out is not the purpose of it either. That's I thought. That's later on. But the only thing that I remember is now she is now in her deathbed. In one of my trips to India, she's now in her deathbed. And Moraine, who's a friend of mine from many years because met her in Geneva. She says, you want to see her? I say goodbye to Arnabas. So she walks me in, she's in her bed, apparently unconscious, very thin, frail. And I approach, everything's silent, everything's quiet. The room is in semi-darkness. And I approach her bed. I'm feeling very emotional. And all of a sudden, boom, she opens her eyes and her smile. So I see the stars and the smile again, and she opens her eyes and she says to me, Arsenio, how are you doing? And I say to her, but I'm supposed to be asking that from you. And then she looked at me. Nobody ever has looked at me like that. I don't know what she saw. Not even I have been able to see anything like that. She looked at me, she looked at me, she looked at me, and she smiled. And she closed her eyes again. That was my farewell from Barnabas. But she was a very beautiful human being. I don't know. I miss those people. They were special.
You bring them back, you do a good job of telling those stories, Arsenio. That's
Anyhow, that's it.
great.
I'm empty.
Another another beautiful.
But thank you because of you, as I said before. This has never happened. It's all because of Alan. Alan is the one that brought me into this framework. I mean, I'm a very shy person. I usually don't tell these things to anybody. I think that the stories I've even told my kids, but you ask me to tell the stories, I mean, that's come to my mind. These are stories that have meaning to me because those are these things that touch my heart.
I wanted to say goodbye to him. Thank you so much. I think it's so important that you tell these stories. For those of us who didn't get to meet most of the Mandalay, this is truly a gift. And the fact that it's recorded, it will be here for eons. So it's a total gift. Keep sharing and telling the story.
Thank you, Len. Thank you.
Thank you.
Betty, thank you for making it happen.
Jai Baba.
Jai
Yes.
Baba.
Jai Baba.
It's a perfect hour. Okay. Until
Thank you. Thank you, Betty.
we'll be talking. Okay. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Jai Baba. Stop the recording. Here we go. All right. Okay. Till next time. Jai Baba.